Hello. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today on reporting unclaimed funds. I am Susie Wagner, the Outreach Administrator for the Division of Unclaimed Funds. We are here today I have Amy Schellhammer. She is our Finance Manager. We have George Gladden, our Compliance Manager, and Kelli Lister, our Legal Counsel. Again, this webinar will be available for replay on our website, along with all the past webinars that we do. We post all of them on our website, so you can always catch it or share it with someone who you may want to share the good knowledge with. If you have any questions during this presentation, you are able to use the Q&A feature within the webinar and type in your questions. We will be answering them at the end of the webinar and potentially throughout if it makes sense to do so. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Maybe. Okay, so just to start us off, I wanted to give us some basic information about unclaimed funds. $3,021 is the average claim last year. So you could be a claimant and not even know it. That's the point of why we're here today, because we have $4 billion that we are safeguarding, and we have 43,000 claims that we paid out last year. We paid out $139 million to Ohioans. So we're not talking about chump change. And if you are curious about how to claim your funds, we are going to be talking about reporting your funds, but just a quick note, if you wanted to claim funds, it's 3 easy steps. You go to our website, unclaimedfunds.ohio.gov. Step number 1, go to missingmoney.com to search for your unclaimed funds. Step number 2, proactively do a checklist of documentation that is on our website. Basically, you're looking for what documents may you need to support that and let us know to verify that this is your money. And then step 3 is just to send it to us. It's that easy, folks. And so now we're going to get started with the agenda. Kelli Lister is going to kick us off.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to speak with you today about how you can satisfy your annual reporting obligation and report and remit unclaimed funds to the Department of Commerce. Today, we were going to discuss a number of different items. First is the Ohio Revised Code, specifically Chapter 169 of the code, which is also known as the Ohio Unclaimed Funds Law. We will be discussing as well the record retention obligation that every holder or potential holder of unclaimed funds has to retain records and documents regarding funds in which they have no ownership interest so that they can be identified and reported to Commerce. We will be talking specifically about a new category of unclaimed funds known as attorney unclaimed funds. We'll be talking about dormancy and how accounts become dormant. In other words, reportable as unclaimed funds to the Department of Commerce. We'll talk about every holder's obligation to provide a notification to account holders of the fact that they are holding dormant funds, and then it is intended that they're going to be reported and remitted in advance of the actual report and remission of those funds. We're going to talk about how to report, about common reporting issues that we are made aware of from holders or that we are aware that are encountered. We're going to talk about what is called a non-report. It is and what that means and how you can satisfy your non-reporting obligations. We're going to be talking about reporting deadlines for unclaimed funds, whether they be the average run-of-the-mill funds or the specifically life insurance proceeds, which have a different reporting deadline and a different period of review. We're going to be talking about how you can go about filing an extension in the event that you feel that you're not going to be able to meet your reporting deadline. And we're also going to talk about the consequences if you fail not to report. Finally, we're going to be talking about the Voluntary Compliance Agreement, which is a program that was developed by the Department of Commerce, Division of Unclaimed Funds, to enable holders who first become aware of their reporting obligations to bring themselves current and report and remit their unclaimed funds in a time and cost efficient manner. Finally, we're going to be providing you with resources that you can draw upon to both answer questions that you might have and also to recognize unclaimed funds and how to maintain your records in the way that makes reporting your unclaimed funds user-friendly, for lack of a better term. And then finally, we're going to open it up to questions, and hopefully we'll be able to provide you with answers to those questions. Next slide, please. So as an initial matter, what are unclaimed funds? Revised Code Chapter 169.01B1 defines unclaimed funds as monies, rights to monies, or intangible property when, as shown by the records of the holder, the owner has not engaged in owner-generated activity within the times allotted or provided or identified by statute. The time for which properties can be dormant before they become reportable to Commerce varies based on the nature of the underlying property. For instance, if you have wages, it's expected that you're going to negotiate that check as payment of your wages within a relatively short period of time. However, if you purchase something like a traveler's check, we recognize that many times those are purchased well in advance of an anticipated travel date, and so there's a much longer period of dormancy before they become properly reportable as unclaimed funds. Examples of common forms of unclaimed funds that we see being reported to the division include inactive checking accounts or savings accounts, refunds or credit balances that a customer may hold with you, uncashed cashier's checks, life insurance benefits, various forms of securities, stocks, and bonds, and then finally, safe deposit box contents. These are all examples of unclaimed property types that can, after a required period of dormancy, be reportable to the Division of Unclaimed Funds. Next slide, please. As I mentioned when I first began speaking, there is in the state of Ohio what is called Ohio Unclaimed Funds Law in Chapter 169 of the Revised Code. It was first enacted in 1968 to require the report of any dormant money, rights to monies, or intangible properties. Businesses or holders must report annually, whether that be a sum report, which would be those instances in which you identify unclaimed funds that you're holding that belong to another, or none reports, which I had also mentioned at the beginning. Those are when you do your due diligence, you review your books and records, but you locate no unclaimed funds that you are currently holding. Next slide, please. Records retention. In Ohio, there is an administrative rule, 1301-3-04, which requires holders of funds to maintain their records of those funds in such a nature that if they subsequently become reportable, they can be readily identified. As a consequence, potential holders must satisfy their record retention obligations, which is to retain records for a period of 5 years beyond the applicable period of dormancy. As I stated earlier, depending on the nature of the underlying funds, whether they be a checking account or a traveler's check, there are different periods of dormancy that are set forth by statute. The obligation of their holder is to retain records for 5 years beyond that applicable period of dormancy. What kind of records should you be retaining? An example would be a copy of the unclaimed funds report that would identify both the amount that you're holding by account number and also then specific owner identifying information regarding each account that you hold of dormant funds. Additionally, it would be expected that you be required all signed and returned notices that you sent out, that last due diligence that I referenced earlier, in advance of reporting and remitting those funds. So if you reach out to a owner of dormant funds and they respond and indicate to you, yes, they have a continuing interest in those funds, it's expected that you would retain a record of that owner-generated activity, that response that you received from the owner, evidencing that they have a continuing interest in the funds that you hold on their behalf. Also, we request that it would be expected that you keep records of aggregate detail of these unclaimed funds in the event that they're of an amount less than $50, where you're not reporting individual property amounts, but rather you would be expecting to report them in aggregate. Similarly, if you receive mail when you reach out to an owner to verify their continuing interest in these dormant funds and it's returned to you as undeliverable, it would be expected that you would keep a record of that undeliverable mail. And then finally, all supporting research and documentation that you use or rely upon in preparing your unclaimed funds reporting, it would be expected that you would maintain that as part of your records for a period of 5 years beyond the applicable period of dormancy for those funds. Next slide, please. Attorney unclaimed funds. A lot of good work is being done with these funds. This was a newly enacted category of funds effective in April 12th of 2021, which by statute provides that the division is to loan funds which meet the definition of attorney unclaimed funds, which consists of IOTA accounts held typically by law firms pursuant to 4705.09 of the revised code. That would be money that they hold in trust for their clients. Also, IOTA funds held pursuant to revised code section 3953.231. These are commonly trust fund accounts, often associated with real estate closings. And then thirdly, unclaimed residual settlement funds, whether for named or unnamed plaintiffs. These likewise would be considered attorney unclaimed funds. By statute, the division loans these funds once reported to it to the Ohio Access to Justice Foundation to support civil legal aid and access to justice programs. The foundation, to be clear, is obligated to repay these funds with interest when these funds are recovered by their rightful owners. The foundation, like the Commerce, is not the owner of the funds. Rather, they serve as a custodian. These are commonly found at law firms once they close down operations or retire, and then these funds are used to promote access to justice for many Ohioans. We're seeing a lot of good work being done by these funds. Next slide, please. Next, we are going to talk about everything businesses need to know about reporting. And I'm turning it over to George Gladden, who can further explain.
Thank you, Kelly. Hi, my name is George Gladden. I'm the Compliance Manager with the Ohio Division of Unclaimed Funds. I just want to say thank you all very much for joining us this afternoon for the presentation. All the information that we're giving you is available on our website at unclaimedfunds.ohio.gov, and I'll be repeating that throughout the presentation. So just some basics for reporting. All businesses, companies, entities that are located in Ohio or do business in Ohio are required to report to the Ohio Division of Unclaimed Funds annually. Even if you don't have any unclaimed funds to report, you are required to file what we call a negative or a none report. And we'll be giving you more information about that. The only exceptions to that are 501c3 hospitals, and political subdivisions. So the reporting process is a 4-step process. So the first step that you would do starting, I would suggest in July of every year would be to review your own accounts for items that might be dormant. And dormant means that there's been no owner-generated activity. And so you'd be looking at your outstanding checklists for checks that, in some cases, older than 3 years. If it's a paycheck or commission check, if it's older than 1 year, look at your aging of accounts receivable reports or patient credit reports. For any credits that you're holding that belong to your clients or customers that are older than 3 years. There are lots of different kinds of unclaimed funds. There are securities with a 5-year dormancy. So you can find a table of the different kinds of unclaimed funds with their dormancy periods. In step 1, if you go to unclaimedfunds.ohio.gov, go to the reporting section and go into the first step, and you'll have access to it there. So that's the first thing that you do. Now, it is possible to report those items before they become dormant if you follow the due diligence mailing guidelines, and that's given by Ohio Revised Code 169.11. As I mentioned, if you don't have any unclaimed funds to report, you are required to file a none report. Once you do file and send in any funds to us that you need to report, you are received from liability under Higher Revised Code 169.07 if you have reported those properly. And if you do not report, you may be subject to penalties and interest that may accumulate daily. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So as I mentioned, the first step on the next slide is to go in and identify those dormant accounts. And you should go in and identify any accounting errors. Say, for example, if you are looking at your outstanding checklist and you find that a check is older than 3 years, however, the check was voided. That would be an example. So after you go through and identify all of those items that are dormant, and let me give you some more examples on the next slide. We'll use a law firm as an example. So funds that are held in their IOLTA account, as Kelli mentioned, those are attorney unclaimed funds, but they also may see wages or their client credits or refunds. Go on to the next one. Those attorney unclaimed funds or those items held in IOTA for a title company or IOLTA, those have a 3-year dormancy period. So as I mentioned, we also may have wages on the next slide. Now wages, there's an exception here. With wages, if it's less than $50, those items are not reportable, but that is the only time the dollar amount comes into play this way. Everything else, even if it's a penny, once it becomes dormant, may be reportable as an unclaimed fund in Ohio. But wages have a 1-year dormancy period, as well as royalties, mineral interests, payments to landowners, investors, and so those are other examples of unclaimed funds. And as I mentioned, there's a list on our website. So you've gone through step 1, you've identified those unclaimed funds. Now you move on the next screen, step 2, the due diligence mailing. For anything $50 or more, you are required to do the due diligence mailing, where you send out a Notice of Unclaimed Funds form OUF8. So you fill out the appropriate places on the form, and you can find that on our website to download. And send it with a self-addressed stamped envelope. Anything between $50 and up to $1,000, you can send it out first class mail. Anything $1,000 or more, you are required to send it out certified mail with a return receipt requested, and you can charge up to $20 against the account to pay for the actual cost of the mailing. And then you're required to give them 30 days to respond. If the owner of the money signs it and returns it to you, they shouldn't send it in to us. They should return it to you. Then it's not unclaimed. That means that you can continue to hold those funds for up to 3 more years if there's a 3-year dormancy, or however long the dormancy period is before they potentially would become dormant again. Or if it's a check that you issued and then reissued, and then you do the due diligence mailing again, that may go on until they don't respond after 30 days. Once they don't respond after 30 days, or if it comes back undeliverable, those items are reportable. And so you are required to complete an unclaimed fund report, and that's step 3. So I'm going to pass it off to Amy Schellhammer, our finance manager, and she's going to talk more about reporting.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. As George said, I'm the finance manager with the Division of Unclaimed Funds. I'm over the section that processes the reports and processes the payments. So some of you may have already dealt with me. We have basically 2 options to reporting, depending on how you wish to pay. The first option that allows for ACH debit and credit card payments is through the Ohio Business Gateway. And when you get access to the Ohio Business Gateway, if you have to either have unclaimed funds in your dashboard, or we have a way to get it added to your dashboard. So if you have a question like that, we can help you with that. Otherwise, the Ohio Business Gateway is managed by another agency. We just utilize their system so that we can gather reports from them. They do have a couple of, I want to say, requirements, and this has to do with their file name. Their file name is only allowing 20 characters. So if you end up uploading a file to the Ohio Business Gateway and you get an error, look to see your file name, see how many characters you have in it. But for that, of course, you have to obtain your NAPA file or a file to submit through the gateway. The gateway requires a file to be submitted at the same time as the payment is made. So if you don't have a NAPA file, you can either see about getting one created through the UP Exchange or HRS Pro, or you can create a PDF version of our forms, which are also on our website. In submitting a payment, if you choose to do ACH debit, please remember to give a debit blocker number to your financial institution if it's needed. Otherwise, the payment will be rejected, which has happened before. So we might get the file, but don't get the payment. So you might hear from us asking for the payment. We do have instructional videos on our website on how to add a report or how to file a report on the fund with funds. And we also, as I said, have instructions on how to add unclaimed funds to the dashboard. Next slide, please. The second option that we have is a secured website. We understood that some people do not have access to the filing administrator on Ohio Business Gateway. So we wanted to provide a secure way that rather than you having to mail in a CD that has the file on it and go through the mailing process that way and risk some security with your file, we thought it would be easier for you to have a secured website for you to upload your data. So you would, in this case though, unfortunately, you would have to mail a check. And the checks are written out to the Ohio Division of Unclaimed Funds. It is not written to the owner. So we've had some instances where they'll write the check to the owner. No, we'll have to return that and you'll have to reissue a check to us. We do have some requirements on our website, main one being special characters. Special characters are not allowed in the file name. It gets confused with the extension, so therefore they're not allowed. So I've had quite a few get the rejected file, don't understand why. The date was coded in there and it had periods in it. So it wouldn't recognize the extension of what that file was. So it prevented it from being uploaded. But this is one of the methods that we have for you to safely give us your file. Next slide, please. On this slide, you can see an example of what the website looks like. We require the FEIN number, you to confirm it, the business name, the email address, a phone number, the person who's uploading this. If we have a question or problem with a file, we will reach out, usually by email, but then by phone. So please provide a valid email or a monitored email so that we can reach the correct person. And of course, the phone number. Sometimes we get a generic phone number without knowing what the extension would be, and that gets to be a problem too. So, next slide. Reporting issues. I can tell you that we get the check or the payment that does not match the report total. Please double check your report totals to make sure that they match before sending us the remittance. And yes, if you're reporting aggregate, you have to pay us the aggregate. So although we don't always require the detail, but if you have it, we take it. Please give it to us. That way you don't have to be contacted for what's in the aggregate. But yes, so double check your report for the totals, please. The full owner detail is missing, such as address, birth date, social security number. Let's face it, if you had to mail the due diligence mailing, you had to have some sort of address. So please make sure that you give that to us as well. The nature of funds code is missing. What is this? Is it a credit? Is it a payroll check? It helps knowing what that is because we also know the dormancy for that, and plus what might be required for the claimant to claim it. That's another thing. Ownership code. Who does this belong to? Does it belong to multiple people? Does it belong to just one person? Please let us know. Is this the payee? Is this the remitter? There's information that was very helpful for us to know. The company FEIN number is missing or the contact is missing. As I said quite a number of times, if there's an issue with a file, we need to know who to contact and how to contact. So, owner detail not in the proper field or the column, the business name, or as a person. This is, again, important to know. We need to know who's going to claim it and what detail that we need them to provide. We do not take faxes, so we are going paperless. So we do not take faxes of the forms. They can be uploaded on that website that I showed you earlier. Next slide, please. Sometimes we get reports uploaded in various places. Please pick one. If you know how you're going to pay, that would very much determine how you're going to report, which method. You're going to go to the Ohio Business Gateway, knowing that we don't take checks that way. Just like our upload website, we don't take credit cards or ACH debit through our upload website yet. Also, the lag time. I do understand there are some businesses that the reporting is from a different division and the payments are submitted by another section. Please try to have the lag time between these to be short. We had some that uploaded a file and they uploaded it and then paid it 2 years later. No, that doesn't work. The likelihood of any more with the retention on some of the places that are uploaded expires after so long. So that's a problem. Checks need to be payable to us, to the unclaimed funds or Department of Commerce, not to the owner. Again, we will have to return the check to you. That delays the report being processed and delays the people getting their funds back. Report submission, email goes to a bad email address or unmonitored email address. Please make sure it is a valid working email address that people can respond to. We're now asking, since luckily people are living longer, that's great. And also these funds are retained in perpetuity, to have the full birth date there when possible. The checks are written from a different business than the filing business. If you're not noting what the filing company's FEIN number or giving us support with the check, then we really need to know what business this belongs to. We have quite a few people that have a reporting agent paying for it. Their address is very different from the filing the business it belongs to. So if you're just sending a check, make sure you put the filing business FEIN number on the check or attach the submission, a copy of the submission. Please note also, when you do submit to our upload website, you are given an email back to you that tells you that the report was successful. If you don't get that email back, you might have had an error with the upload and we never might have gotten it. We also have a case where old forms are being used. Please use the current forms. They are on our website because they match the current policies and the current laws. So those are important. And revisions to recent reports, they take time. So please take your time before you submit it. We do have an extension filing available to you. When in doubt, do the extension. It allows you more time. Next slide, please. And I'm gonna let turn, sorry, I got confused. Negative reporting. As we told earlier, we have negative reports or non-reports that need to be filed. This tells you you've done your due diligence, you've looked at all your data, and the report does still need to be filed. The Ohio Business Gateway is probably the easiest way to file your non-report. Presently, we are still taking the paper, but we are going paperless. So if you can start doing electronic, that is your best bet. Next slide, please. Reporting deadlines. Most people, most companies file, the due date is November 1st. This includes everything but the life insurance companies. Life insurance companies, their filing due date is May 1st, but their dormancy ends December 31st. So they have time to get their due diligence mailings back. Now, everybody else, prior November 1st would be their deadline. And the dormancy date for that is June 30th. So for 2024, for example, the dormancy ends at June 30th. Start looking through your accounts, do your mailings, and then if you have nothing to report, then file your non-report as soon as you know that. The earliest you can file the non-report would be July 1st because it takes place as of June 30th. So I stated before about the extensions. This is the example of the page. Take advantage of the extensions. As I said before, when in doubt, if you have a question on the report that you want to make sure that people have all are really dormant, or you have something still outstanding that you want to make sure that is not going to clear, hold on to it. Do your extension, allow that time to process so that we can get an exact report and you don't have to do a revision. On this, I suggest you request it to the fullest, which would be 120 days. You can only do an extension one time. So if you need to request an extension, do it for the full 120 days. If you get it done earlier than that, great, not a problem. Okay. Next, George will be discussing the consequences of not filing.
All right, thank you, Amy. The question is, so what happens if we don't file or if we've never filed? The state may select you for an audit. Now, our audit selection process, it's a random process. And so there are hundreds of thousands of companies in Ohio that are required to report annually. We do select them randomly, and then we look at the type of the company, the size of the company, the reporting history to see if it would make sense for us to conduct an audit. We also conduct audits and join in on audits conducted by contract auditors, third-party auditors for multi-state companies. So that's a possibility. And that's given under Ohio Revised Code 169.03, Section G1. So if you receive a letter informing you that you've been selected for an audit, it is legitimate, it is real, and it is involuntary, which means that you don't, unfortunately, get to say, I don't want to do it. That's a possibility that you may be audited. We can also enter into audits if we get a consumer complaint, and so you may be selected that way. We had a question about fines and penalties. So it's actually written into our Ohio Unclaimed Fund law on sections 169.12 and 169.99 that the state may assess a civil penalty of $100 for a company that knowingly does not report their unclaimed funds or an additional $100 for a company that does not report after being directed to do so by the Ohio Department of Commerce. And 1% additional penalty on the funds that should have been reported for an additional 25 months, and that's up to $500 per day, and that's the ORC 169.99 part, so that's $500 per day, and then 1% interest on the funds that, excuse me, not 1%, additional interest on the funds that should have been reported, and that it accumulates daily. The important word there is may, and so there was a question about what if someone has never filed a non-report. We really focus in on the intentionality. So we much prefer to work with companies and educate them and let them know what their reporting responsibilities are. It's one of the reasons why we get out and do these webinars. But we also have a program called the Voluntary Compliance Program, and as you'll see on the next slide here, Kelly mentioned this earlier. We developed this program to give companies an opportunity to catch up on their filing. So the requirements of the program, it's a contract that you would enter into with the state of Ohio. The first requirement is that you must not be under audit. So if you receive the audit letter, you can't go into the voluntary compliance agreement. You have to go through the audit. But if you're not under audit, or if you don't receive that letter, then you can go ahead and complete a self-examination of your records, looking for anything that's dormant over the past 10 years. We do request the last 10 reporting cycles, the last 10 years. And then you are required to do the due diligence mailing that I described earlier. And then after 30 days, you can fill out the voluntary compliance agreement, which you can download from our website, unclaimedfunds.ohio.gov, and then send that in to the Ohio Division of Unclaimed Funds. You can send it to me, and we'll give you the contact information at the end. Once we receive that, we will review it, and it'll go through our legal division. I see our division legal counsel popping up here. And then after it's signed by our superintendent, you will have 60 days to report. And like I said, it is a contract. So once you enter into that contract, you are bound by those terms. But it's actually the quickest, easiest, most cost-efficient way to come into compliance. And so it will catch you up over the past 10 years. It gives you a chance to report that. And you are held harmless from fines and penalties. And we do take a look at that if you should have ever happen to come up for the random selection for the audit. Kelli, I can see that you have some things you'd like to add.
I jumped on just a second what George had said. It's a great program. I mean, many holders are just simply ignorant of unclaimed funds law. They're not deliberately non-compliant. And this program is addressed for them. It's focused on compliance, not on punishment. It ensures that the holders of funds, that these funds are returned to the rightful owners, but it provides where we are as the custodian going to provide hold them in perpetuity, engage in outreach efforts, and on which interest is going to accrue. So obviously it's to the benefit of the owners, but it's also to the benefit of the holders who are holding them. It relieves them of their record keeping obligations. And as George had just said, you're held harmless from any fines or penalties. You're also held freed up from any potential liability for those funds. So it's a win-win situation for both the owner and for the holder. And it's been a tremendous success. It allows a holder to bring themselves into compliance in a time and cost-efficient way. And so I thoroughly encourage anybody who's listening to this webinar who might be eligible to engage in the voluntary compliance agreement program to seriously consider doing so. We're happy to provide you with any information that you need and answer any questions that you might have that are specific to your business. Thank you for letting me jump in.
No, sure. So we got a question to go through that process again. So first of all, to be eligible, you can't be under audit. Go to our website, unclaimedfunds.ohio.gov. Go to the reporting section. There's a section for voluntary compliance agreements. You can download the agreement and some instructions. You're required to do a self-examination of your accounts and determine what your unclaimed funds are. So you are required to do a due diligence mailing prior to completing the agreement, signing it, and then sending that into us. And then we go through and review it. And once it's approved, we will notify you, and then you will have 60 days to report that. If there are any further questions, we can take those at the end there. So as I mentioned on our website, we have reporting resources, one of which is the information about voluntary compliance agreement. But if you look on the next slide, we do have these we had some questions about if we were going to be sending a recording of this session. We will undoubtedly post that on our website. We have past webinars posted as well. We have videos on how to report, how to set up an account on the Ohio Business Gateway. We have, if you go into the reporting forms and resources tab, or section, we have an unclaimed funds reporting guide, all of the forms that we mentioned, and all of that information. And then all of the steps under the reporting section as well, with further information. So, but if you're looking for more information, on the next slide, we have some additional websites. Again, our website is unclaimedfunds.ohio.gov, and that's what the QR code on the screen takes you to. If you are interested in searching to see if you have any funds to claim out there, go to missingmoney.com, and you can search multiple states. And on the next page, it's to get set up on the Ohio Business Gate. I'm sorry, I wasn't quite ready yet. But the next website that I'm mentioning here is if you need help with the Ohio Business Gateway, you can go to gateway.ohio.gov or business.ohio.gov, and that will take you there. And if you'd like to learn more about unclaimed funds nationally, you can go to the National Association of Unclaimed Property Administrators at unclaimed.org and learn more information there. Now on the next page, Amy is going to give you kind of an idea of where we're headed, the future of our reporting and what's coming next.
All right, thank you, George. Before I go into that, I do want to go over just one more thing that came up just recently, and that had to do with somebody was trying to look for something on missingmoney.com where they had reported it for their client and their client couldn't find it. One of the reasons the client could not find it is no address was given, and they were looking under Ohio. Since no address was given on missingmoney.com, they would have to look through all the states. This is why it becomes more important for you to at least have the address, because that allows them to at least look for their claim. Now, future reporting. We have been listening to what you've had issues with over the years. We do understand it just takes a while for us to get there, but we've been looking into other alternatives to reporting. As I said before, we're going towards more of a paperless way, but we also want to provide better opportunities for you, other methods of payments as well. So please be aware that we've listened. Unfortunately, it won't take place for the reporting year 2024, but we're looking to have that in 2025. So we will keep you more informed. We will let you know more as time goes on, and keep posted. So please be mindful. We'll probably send you more emails or updates, or even on our next postcard, probably more information. So look forward to that. Now, should you have any questions, these are the email addresses that you can send a question to, plus our main number. As I said, if you're having trouble finding the person on there, please contact the phone number as well. 614-466-4433 is our main number.